Daniel Green never wanted to be a hero. He liked his quiet life teaching at Western University, where he studied languages that didn't even exist yet. His small office was filled with books and strange-looking devices he built himself. His colleagues thought his work on alien languages was a waste of time. After all, humans had never met aliens. That changed on a rainy Tuesday in April. Daniel was grading papers when his phone rang. He almost ignored it. Unknown numbers usually meant sales, calls about extended warranties or student loan forgiveness, but something made him answer. Professor Green, this is General Paul Wright from Space Force Command. Daniel nearly dropped his phone. Space Force? I think you have the wrong number. No mistake, Professor. Your papers on theoretical xenolinguistics caught our attention. We need your expertise immediately. 3 days later, Daniel found himself on a military shuttle heading to the USS Horizon, Earth's premier diplomatic vessel. He clutched a small duffel bag containing hastily packed clothes and his prototype translator device. The device was just a research project, something he'd built to test his theories. It wasn't ready for actual use, neither was he. The shuttle ride was rough. Daniel's stomach lurched with each course correction. The young pilot, Betty Adams, seemed amused by his discomfort. First time in space, Professor? Daniel nodded, afraid to open his mouth. Don't worry. Most people puke their first time. Bags are under your seat. When they docked with the USS Horizon, Daniel was the last one off the shuttle. His legs felt wobbly, like he was walking on a waterbed. A tall woman in a crisp uniform waited for him. Professor Green? I'm Captain Susan Miller. Welcome aboard. Daniel tried to stand straighter. Thank you, Captain. I still don't understand why I'm here. Captain Miller's face was serious. Walk with me, Professor. They moved through the ship's corridors. Crew members stopped and saluted as they passed. Daniel felt out of place in his tweed jacket with elbow patches among all the uniforms. 3 months ago, we made contact with an alien species. They call themselves the Vraxians. They approached our research station near Jupiter and established communication. Daniel stopped walking. Actual aliens? With their own language? Yes. And that's the problem. Our military translators have been working around the clock, but the Vraxian language is like nothing we've ever encountered. It's not just words, they communicate with sounds, body movements, and even chemical signals our sensors can barely detect. They entered a large conference room with a viewport showing the blackness of space and the distant glow of Jupiter. Photos and diagrams covered the walls. Daniel's eyes widened at images of tall, insect-like creatures with multiple limbs and large compound eyes. The peace talks are stalling, Captain Miller continued. The Vraxians requested a non-military translator after reviewing Earth's academic publications. Specifically, they asked for you. Daniel stared at her. Me? But my work is theoretical. I've never actually. Your papers on multimodal language processing and sensory linguistic integration are exactly what we need right now. The Vraxians communicate in ways our standard translation protocols can't handle. A man in a lab coat entered the room carrying a tablet. Captain, the Vraxian shuttle is preparing to dock. Thank you, Dr. Rivera. Captain Miller turned back to Daniel. You have 1 hour to prepare, Professor. Then we'll take you to the diplomatic station. Left alone in the conference room, Daniel frantically reviewed the files they'd given him. The military translators had made some progress, but it was clear they were missing important contextual elements. The Vraxian language seemed to operate on multiple channels simultaneously, with meaning emerging from the combination rather than from each element individually. Daniel connected his prototype device to the ship's computer and began downloading the Vraxian language samples. His fingers trembled as he made adjustments to his algorithms. An hour later, Captain Miller returned with a team that included Dr. Rivera and a serious-looking woman introduced as Nancy Powell, the lead military translator. It's time, Professor. The journey to the diplomatic station was short. As they approached, Daniel saw a structure that looked like a giant snowflake made of metal and glass, spinning slowly in orbit around Jupiter. Part human construction, part Vraxian design. The station was built as a joint project, explained Dr. Rivera. Neutral territory. The docking procedure took 20 minutes. Daniel used that time to calm his racing heart. He had spent his career preparing for this moment without ever believing it would come. Inside the station, the air smelled slightly sweet, like cinnamon mixed with ozone. The hallways were taller and wider than needed for humans. The Vraxians are larger than us, Nancy explained, noticing Daniel's observation, and they prefer more open spaces. They entered a large circular room. One half held chairs and tables scaled for humans. The other half contained strange, nest-like structures. Between them was a transparent barrier. "Security measure, Captain," Miller said, "until we're sure about their intentions." Daniel set up his device on the human side of the room. His hands were steadier now. This was familiar territory, setting up equipment, checking connections, running diagnostics. A door opened on the Vraxian side and Daniel's breath caught in his throat. The creature that entered was tall, at least 7 feet, with a body like a praying mantis but with smoother lines. Its carapace shimmered with colors that shifted as it moved. Multiple limbs folded and unfolded in what seemed like a deliberate pattern. Most striking were its eyes, large compound structures that reflected Daniel's terrified face back at him 6 times over. 2 more Vraxians followed the first. They arranged themselves in the nest-like structures, their limbs moving in synchronized patterns. Nancy Powell activated the military translation system. A mechanical voice filled the room. "The Vraxian delegation welcomes the human representatives. We are pleased to continue our discussions of mutual understanding." But Daniel's device picked up something different. According to his readings, the Vraxians were communicating much more. Subtle shifts in their carapace colors, small vibrations in their antennae, and chemical signatures his sensors barely detected. The lead Vraxian turned its enormous head toward Daniel and made a series of clicks and hums. Daniel's device translated, "We anticipate consuming your knowledge with pleasure." The military translator said something completely different. "We look forward to learning from each other." Daniel frowned. That wasn't right. Either his device was wrong, or the military system was missing crucial context. Captain Miller nudged him. "Professor, they're waiting for our response." Daniel swallowed hard. He was just supposed to be here to observe and improve the translation system, not participate directly. But something told him this moment was crucial. "Tell them," he began, then reconsidered. "No, let me try something." He adjusted his device and spoke directly into it. The machine converted his words into Vraxian sounds, accompanied by light patterns displayed on a small projector. He pointed toward the aliens. The Vraxians became absolutely still. Then, all at once, they began moving their limbs in rapid patterns. Colors flashed across their bodies. Nancy Powell's eyes widened. "What did you say to them?" Daniel looked at his device readout. "I greeted them in what I believe is a formal manner, acknowledging both their verbal and nonverbal communication channels." The lead Vraxian stepped closer to the barrier, its eyes fixed on Daniel. "You speak with fuller meaning than the others," the creature said, according to Daniel's translator. "Perhaps consumption can be avoided." Captain Miller leaned toward Daniel. "What does it mean by consumption?" Daniel shook his head slightly. "I'm not sure yet, but I think we've been missing a lot in translation so far." And just like that, Daniel Green, who had never wanted to be a hero, became humanity's voice. To the stars. 2 weeks passed aboard the diplomatic station. Daniel spent most of his time in a small room that served as both his bedroom and his office. The walls were covered with notes, printouts of Vraxian language patterns, and photos of the aliens with body parts labeled. Sleep came rarely. When it did, Daniel dreamed of clicking sounds and flashing colors. The Vraxian language was getting into his head, changing how he thought. He sometimes caught himself making small clicking sounds with his tongue while working. Each day brought new meetings with the Vraxians. The military team grew frustrated with the slow progress, but Daniel saw patterns emerging. The aliens communicated on multiple levels at once. Words, sounds, colors, and even smells all carried meaning. His translator device captured more than the military systems but still missed things. Nancy Powell, the military translator, didn't hide her doubts. Your academic theories are fascinating, Professor, but we need practical results, she said during their morning briefing. Admiral Young expects a breakthrough soon. Daniel rubbed his tired eyes. Language isn't just words, Lieutenant Powell. The Vraxians think differently than we do. Their entire concept of communication is unlike ours. That's why we brought you here, Captain Miller reminded them both. Today's meeting covers trade agreements. We need clarity. When they entered the meeting room, Daniel noticed something different about the Vraxians. Their normally iridescent shells seemed duller. Their movements were faster, jerkier. The lead Vraxian, whom Daniel had started calling Ambassador in his notes, positioned itself closer to the barrier than usual. Admiral Kevin Young led the human delegation. He was a stern man with gray hair and little patience for the slow pace of diplomacy. He spoke directly to the translator system. We propose an exchange of technological information, specifically in the areas of propulsion and energy production. The military translator converted his words into Vraxian sounds and light patterns. The response from the ambassador came quickly. Too quickly, Daniel thought. The military system translated, "We find this proposal acceptable and suggest beginning with an exchange of basic scientific principles." But Daniel's device showed something very different. According to his readings, the ambassador's response included warning signals, specifically in the ultraviolet flashes that humans couldn't see without equipment. Daniel leaned toward Captain Miller. "Something's wrong. They're agitated." "They just agreed to the exchange," Miller whispered back. "No, there's more. My system is picking up warning signals in their visual communication." Admiral Young continued, unaware of Daniel's concerns. "Excellent. We will prepare materials demonstrating our current propulsion technologies and would welcome similar information from your people." As the Admiral spoke, Lieutenant George Harrison, who was standing against the wall, suddenly gasped and collapsed to the floor. Dr. Rivera rushed to his side. The meeting broke into chaos. "Get a medical team in here now," Captain Miller ordered. The Vraxians moved in unison, backing away from the barrier, their limbs moving in rapid patterns that Daniel's system struggled to translate. Dr. Rivera looked up from Harrison's unconscious form. "He's having some kind of reaction. Heart rate elevated, pupils dilated. We need to get him to the medical bay." As the medical team removed Harrison, Admiral Young turned to the Vraxians. "What happened? Did you do something to my officer?" The military translator conveyed his words, but the tone was all wrong. What should have been a concerned question sounded like an accusation. The ambassador's carapace flashed brilliant colors. The military system translated, "We have taken no hostile action, perhaps the human is ill." Daniel's system caught something else, a pattern of chemical signals released into the air. His sensors indicated they were similar to what humans would recognize as stress hormones. Back in the human section of the station, an emergency meeting was called. Harrison had been stabilized, but Dr. Rivera looked worried. He was exposed to some kind of neurotoxin. I've never seen anything like it. If we hadn't treated him quickly, I knew it. Admiral Young slammed his fist on the table. "They attacked us. This is an act of war." "No," Daniel said, louder than he intended. Everyone turned to look at him. He cleared his throat. I don't think it was intentional." "Explain," Captain Miller said. Daniel pulled up the data from his translator device. "During the meeting, I detected chemical signals from the Vraxians. They release these compounds when they're under stress. Based on their behavior, I think they were frightened." "Frightened? Of what?" Nancy Powell asked. "Of us," Daniel said simply. "And I think these compounds they release are toxic to humans, but not intentionally so. It's like how some plants release chemicals to protect themselves when threatened. It's a biological response, not a weapon." Admiral Young wasn't convinced. "That's a convenient explanation, Professor. But why would they suddenly feel threatened during a routine discussion?" Daniel reviewed his notes. "It wasn't sudden. They've been showing increasing signs of stress for days. Our military translator has been missing these signals." He pointed to his device. When we talk about exchange or sharing technology, their stress responses spike. There's something about these concepts that frightens them. Dr. Rivera looked thoughtful. It could be a cultural taboo. Maybe sharing technology has negative associations in their society. Or, Captain Miller suggested, they think we want their technology but don't plan to share our own. Daniel shook his head. It's more fundamental than that. I think we're missing something important in the translation. That night, Daniel didn't sleep at all. He reviewed every recording of the Vraxian meetings, focusing on moments when the aliens showed signs of stress. A pattern emerged. Certain words and phrases consistently triggered reactions. Exchange, cooperation, sharing resources, mutual benefit. Why would concepts central to diplomacy cause fear? Daniel played with his translator's settings, looking at root structures in the Vraxian language. Could there be a deeper meaning they were missing? At 4 a.m. he found something. The Vraxian word that the military system translated as cooperation shared a root structure with another word his system had recorded but not fully translated. Daniel cross-referenced it with his growing dictionary of Vraxian concepts. His eyes widened as the meaning became clear. Consumption, he whispered to the empty room. Their word for cooperation shares a root with their word for consumption. He checked other terms. The pattern held. Words related to sharing, exchange, and cooperation all connected to concepts of eating, digestion, and absorption. Daniel grabbed his tablet and rushed to Captain Miller's quarters, ignoring the late hour. This couldn't wait until morning. Captain, he said when she answered the door, still in her sleep clothes. I know why the Vraxians are afraid of us. We've been accidentally threatening to eat them for 2 weeks straight. Captain Miller stared at Daniel, her sleep-fogged brain trying to process his words. Threatening to eat them? She repeated. Yes, Daniel said, pacing in her small quarters. Their language connects cooperation with consumption. When we say we want to cooperate with you, they hear something closer to we want to consume you, or we want you to consume us. No wonder they've been terrified. Miller pulled on her uniform jacket. We need to tell Admiral Young immediately. 20 minutes later, they sat in the station's conference room with Admiral Young, Dr. Rivera, and Nancy Powell. Daniel explained his discovery, showing them the language patterns on his tablet. It's not just about words, Daniel said. The Vraxians evolved differently than humans. Their whole concept of interaction is tied to consumption. Their history, their biology, their culture, it all shapes their language. Admiral Young frowned. So every time we've tried to be diplomatic, we've actually been threatening them? Essentially, yes, Daniel said. And there's more. Remember how they describe themselves as Vraxians. That's our translation. Their actual term for themselves translates closer to the uneaten ones. Their entire identity is built around not being consumed. Dr. Rivera looked troubled. That suggests a history of predation. Maybe on their homeworld they evolved as prey species. Daniel nodded. That would explain their physical characteristics. Compound eyes for wide vision range, quick movements, exoskeletons for protection. This is fascinating anthropology, Professor, Admiral Young said impatiently. But how does it help us? Now, we need to salvage these negotiations. We need to completely rebuild our translation system, Daniel said. But first, we need to reassure them that we don't intend to eat them or be eaten by them. Nancy Powell looked skeptical. How do we communicate that if our words are being misinterpreted? I think I can modify my device to better translate our intentions, Daniel said. But it will take time. Admiral Young checked his watch. Time is something we don't have. The Vraxians requested a meeting for 800 hours. That's less than 3 hours from now. Daniel spent those hours in his room, working frantically on his translation device. He altered algorithms, adjusted sensitivity settings for chemical and visual inputs, and rewrote key phrases. The military translation team worked alongside him, incorporating his insights into their system. At 0755, they gathered outside the meeting room. Daniel looked exhausted but determined. Captain Miller put a hand on his shoulder. Do your best, Professor. That's all anyone can ask. They entered the meeting room to find the Vraxian side empty. A minute passed. Then 5. Where are they? Admiral Young muttered. At Euro 810, the station's alarm system activated. Red lights flashed, and a computerized voice announced, "Alert. Unauthorized. Ship departure detected. Alert." They rushed to the control center. The station's sensors showed a small Vraxian shuttle leaving the docking bay. "They're running," Captain Miller said. A communications officer called out, "Sir, we're detecting a transmission from the shuttle. It's directed toward Vraxian space." Daniel moved to the communications console. "Let me hear it." The officer hesitated, looking at Admiral Young, who nodded. The sound that filled the control center was a rapid series of clicks and tones that made no sense to most people there. But Daniel listened intently. His device translated partial phrases. Danger, predator species. Request immediate. Prepare. Defenses. "They're calling for help," Daniel said. "They think we lured them here to trap them." Admiral Young's face darkened. "Can we stop their transmission?" "No, sir," the communications officer said. "It's already been sent." "How long would it take for Vraxian reinforcements to arrive?" Captain Miller asked. Dr. Rivera checked the long-range sensors. "Based on our tracking of their main fleet, 6 hours, maybe less." Admiral Young turned to Daniel. 6 hours to fix this, Professor, or we're looking at the first interspecies war in human history. The next hour was a blur of activity. The military prepared defensive measures while Daniel worked with Dr. Olivia Martinez, the ship's lead scientist, to develop a new approach. "We need to communicate with them directly," Daniel said, "without the barrier of translation devices." "How?" Dr. Martinez asked. "You can't speak their language physically." "Not perfectly, no, but I can try." Daniel showed her the modifications he'd made to his translator. "This can help me produce some of their sounds and light patterns, and I've been studying their chemical signals. If I can just get them to listen." Captain Miller approached them. "The Admiral is considering military options. Please tell me you have an alternative." Daniel looked at his device. "Maybe, but I'll need to speak to the Vraxians directly. On their shuttle?" "That's too dangerous," Miller said. "They see us as predators, remember?" "Exactly," Daniel said. "And what would surprise a predator more than prey walking willingly into its mouth?" Dr. Martinez shook her head. "You're talking about boarding their shuttle? That's suicide." "Not if I go alone and unarmed," Daniel said, looking as unthreatening as possible. Captain Miller studied his face. "The Admiral will never approve this." "Then don't tell him," Daniel said simply. "Not until I'm already there." Against her better judgment, Captain Miller helped Daniel prepare. They located the Vraxian shuttle using the station's sensors. It was maintaining position about 2 kilometers from the station, likely waiting for their fleet. Daniel took a small, human shuttle, piloting it himself with minimal training from a crew member. His hands shook on the controls as he approached the alien vessel. He opened a communication channel. "This is Professor Daniel Green," he said into his modified translator. "I am coming alone and unarmed. I wish to speak with you." For a long moment, there was no response. Daniel's little shuttle drifted closer to the much larger Vraxian vessel. Then, a light flashed on the alien ship's hull. A docking bay opened. Daniel's heart pounded as he guided his shuttle toward the opening. He had no idea if he was flying into a trap, a prison, or his death. But he knew that if he did nothing, millions might die in the misunderstanding that would follow. The Vraxian docking system took control of his shuttle for the final approach. With a slight bump, his vessel connected to theirs. The airlock cycled. Daniel grabbed his translator device and moved to the door. As it opened, he found himself face to face with the ambassador and 2 other Vraxians. Their massive compound. Eyes reflected his image back at him. Their limbs twitched in patterns his device translated as extreme agitation and fear. Daniel slowly raised his empty hands. Then, using his device to produce the correct sounds and light patterns, he spoke directly to them. "I come without weapons," he said, his translator converting his words. "I am not a predator. There has been a mistake in understanding between Yes. The ambassador's limbs moved in a pattern Daniel had never seen before. His device couldn't translate it fully, but he understood the general meaning: confusion and disbelief. Taking a deep breath, Daniel stepped forward into the Vraxian shuttle, leaving the safety of his own vessel behind. The door closed behind him with a final sounding click. Inside the Vraxian shuttle, the air was thicker and warmer than on the human station. It smelled sweet, like overripe fruit. Daniel stood very still as the three Vraxians surrounded him. Their height was even more impressive up close. The ambassador towered at least 7 feet tall. The ambassador's limbs moved in patterns that Daniel's device translated as questions. Why come alone? Where are your weapons? What trap is this? Daniel spoke slowly, letting his translator convert his words into Vraxian sounds and light patterns. There is no trap. I came to fix a mistake. Our words have been wrong. The Vraxian's antennae twitched. One of them moved to a console and adjusted something. The lights in the room dimmed slightly, then brightened in a rhythmic pattern. Daniel realized they were changing the environment to better communicate. Your people say cooperation, but we hear consumption. Daniel continued, using his hands to make simple gestures that his research suggested might help convey meaning. We do not want to eat you. We do not want to be eaten. The ambassador's compound eyes reflected Daniel's face in multiple distorted images. Its front limbs made a series of precise movements that Daniel's device struggled to translate. If not consumption, then what? The device finally rendered. Daniel thought carefully. He needed a concept that couldn't be misunderstood. Separate beings, remaining separate, but working toward common goals. Like stars in the same sky, not touching, but creating light together. This was a risk. His translator might not convey the metaphor correctly, but the Vraxians went completely still. A reaction Daniel had learned indicated deep focus. The ambassador turned to the others. They communicated in rapid patterns that moved too quickly for Daniel's device to capture. Then the ambassador faced Daniel again. Show truth, the device translated. How separate beings work without consumption. Daniel smiled. They were asking for examples. On Earth, different species help each other without becoming one. Birds eat parasites from larger animals. Plants provide oxygen for animals to breathe. Humans create protected spaces for endangered species. As he spoke, the ambassador moved closer. Its limbs now formed patterns that Daniel's device translated as cautious interest rather than fear. Your eyes, the device translated the ambassador's response. Forward-facing. Predator eyes. Daniel nodded. Yes, humans evolved as predators. We hunted animals for food. But we do not hunt sentient beings. We do not hunt Vraxians. This seemed to disturb them. Their carapaces flashed colors that indicated distress. You consume other life forms? The device translated. Daniel realized he'd made another mistake. The concept of eating any living thing might be horrifying to them. He needed to understand more about them. What do Vraxians eat? He asked directly. The answer surprised him. According to his translator, they consumed sunlight and minerals. They were more like plants than animals in their feeding habits, absorbing energy directly rather than consuming other organisms. No wonder they were terrified of us, Daniel thought. To them, the very concept of eating another living thing was monstrous. He tried a different approach. Vraxians and humans are different. We eat, you absorb. But we can still exist together, share knowledge, explore space as separate species. For nearly an hour they talked. Daniel explained human biology and culture in simple terms. The Vraxians, growing more comfortable, shared information about themselves. They came from a world where the dominant life forms photosynthesized. Their society had no concept of predation until they began exploring space. As Daniel's translator improved its understanding of their language, communication became easier. He learned that their word for diplomat, translated literally as one who prevents consumption, essentially a protector. The ambassador's colors shifted to a pattern Daniel had never seen before. "You're coming here, alone and vulnerable. This is not predator behavior." Daniel nodded. "I wanted to show trust." Suddenly, the shuttle's communication system activated. A series of rapid clicks and tones filled the chamber. The Vraxians' reactions were immediate. Their movements became agitated again. "What is it?" Daniel asked. The ambassador's response came through his translator. "Our defense fleet approaches. They received our distress call. They prepare for conflict." Daniel's heart sank. "We need to stop them. Tell them there's no danger. Not our choice alone." The device translated the ambassador's response. "Fleet commander decides." An idea formed in Daniel's mind. It was risky, but it might be their only chance to prevent war. "Let me speak to your commander," he said. "Show them a human surrendering willingly. Show them we want peace, not consumption." The Vraxians communicated among themselves in rapid patterns again. Finally, the ambassador responded, "Possible. But fleet commander may still choose conflict." "War helps no one," Daniel said. "Let me try." The ambassador made a movement Daniel's device translated as agreement. One of the other Vraxians moved to the shuttle's control panel and began preparations to rendezvous with their approaching fleet. Daniel sent a message to Captain Miller using his personal communicator. "Making progress. Vraxian fleet approaching. Will attempt to negotiate directly. Tell Admiral Young not to take aggressive action." The reply came quickly. "Admiral Young is furious about your unauthorized mission. Preparing defensive measures. You have 1 hour to resolve this." Daniel looked at the ambassador. "We don't have much time." The shuttle's engines engaged. Through a viewport, Daniel watched the diplomatic station grow smaller as they moved away from it. He was now completely in Vraxian custody, traveling toward their battle fleet, carrying the fate of human Vraxian relations with him. As they traveled, Daniel continued learning about Vraxian culture. He discovered that their primary form of art was light pattern creation, essentially painting with colored light. Their concept of music involved complex vibrations that humans couldn't even hear. They had poetry made of scent combinations. After 30 minutes, the shuttle's sensors detected the approaching Vraxian fleet. Daniel moved to the viewport and saw them. 7 large vessels in a formation that reminded him of a flower. Their design was elegant, with sweeping curves and translucent sections that glowed with inner light. The ambassador joined him at the viewport. "Fleet commander will speak with you. But be warned, commander less willing to trust than we are." Daniel nodded. "I understand." The ambassador made a sound Daniel's device didn't translate. It seemed almost like a sigh. "If you fail, both our species may suffer." "Then I won't fail," Daniel said, with more confidence than he felt. The shuttle docked with the largest Vraxian vessel. As the airlock prepared to open, Daniel checked his translator one last time. His hands were steady now, despite the enormity of what he was about to attempt. The door opened. Daniel took a deep breath and stepped from the shuttle into the heart of the Vraxian fleet. The main chamber of the Vraxian command ship was vast. The ceiling rose at least 30 feet above Daniel's head. The walls curved in organic patterns and glowed with soft, shifting colors. In the center stood a raised platform where a Vraxian, larger than any Daniel had seen, waited. The fleet commander's carapace was darker than the others, almost black, with streaks of deep purple that flashed when it moved. 8 limbs instead of the usual 6 extended from its body. The compound eyes seemed to burn with an inner light. Daniel approached slowly, the ambassador following close behind. Other Vraxians lined the walls of the chamber, their limbs occasionally twitching in what Daniel's translator identified as nervous anticipation. The fleet commander made a series of sharp clicking sounds. Daniel's device translated, "So, this is the human who comes alone into our fleet, either very brave or very foolish." Daniel bowed slightly. "I come seeking understanding, not conflict." "Your species sent distress signals," the commander responded through the translator. They say, humans threatened consumption. A mistake in translation, Daniel explained. Humans do not wish to consume Vraxians or be consumed by them. We seek a relationship of mutual respect between separate species. The commander's limbs moved in patterns too complex for Daniel's device to fully translate. The partial translation suggested disbelief and suspicion. Show proof of peaceful intent, the commander demanded. Daniel thought quickly. What could convince them? Words alone weren't enough. He needed a gesture they would understand, something that would transcend the language barrier. In human culture, he said, we have a ritual to show trust and peaceful intentions. May I demonstrate? The commander's antennae twitched, indicating curiosity. Proceed. Daniel removed his translator device and set it on the floor. Then he slowly knelt, lowered his head, and extended his empty hands, palms up. He remained still, in this vulnerable position. The chamber went silent. Even the background hum of the ship's system seemed to fade. Then the ambassador stepped forward and made quick movements with its limbs. The ambassador explains your gesture, another Vraxian translated, this one wearing what appeared to be a communication device. You make yourself vulnerable. You show submission. Daniel looked up. Not submission, trust. I show that I believe. You will not harm me even though you could. The fleet commander descended from the platform and approached Daniel. Standing directly above him, the commander was truly intimidating. One sharp limb extended toward Daniel's face. Daniel held perfectly, still as the limb touched his cheek. He felt a slight sting, then warmth as blood trickled down his face. A collective sound like rushing wind filled the chamber, the Vraxian equivalent of a gasp. Drawing blood was apparently significant. The commander spoke again, this time in a different tone. Blood. You bleed red. Daniel nodded slowly. Yes, all humans bleed red. Our scientists studied Earth life forms from distance, the commander continued. Predators spill blood of prey, then consume. Yet you offer your blood willingly. Why? To show that I trust you not to see me as prey, Daniel said. To show that humans and Vraxians can move beyond the roles of predator and prey. The commander studied the small drop of blood on its limb. Then it made a series of movements that caused the other Vraxians to stir excitedly. The translator Vraxian explained, Fleet Commander performs the recognition of non-consumption intent. This is very rare honor. Daniel felt a wave of relief. Then his communicator buzzed. He reached for it slowly, making sure the Vraxians could see what he was doing. It was a message from Captain Miller. Admiral Young has authorized defensive measures. Weapon systems activating in 15 minutes. Whatever you're doing, finish it fast. Daniel looked up at the fleet commander. My people are afraid, just as yours are. They prepare defensive actions. We have very little time to prevent misunderstanding from becoming conflict. The commander made a sharp sound. Your fleet threatens? Not attack. Defense, Daniel clarified quickly. They fear your ships, as you fear ours. Fear leads to mistakes. The commander considered this. What do you propose? A gesture both sides will understand, Daniel said. A ritual to demonstrate peaceful intentions. 10 minutes later, Daniel found himself in a small Vraxian shuttle heading back toward the human diplomatic station. Beside him sat the fleet commander and the ambassador. Behind them, the Vraxian fleet remained in position. Weapon systems inactive. Daniel's communicator connected with Captain Miller. I'm returning with 2 Vraxian representatives. Tell Admiral Young to stand down defensive systems and prepare for a peace ceremony. A what? Miller sounded confused. A ritual both species will understand, Daniel explained. Just trust me. When they docked with the station, Admiral Young, Captain Miller, and a group of armed security personnel waited in the docking bay. Their expressions changed from tense to shocked when they saw Daniel's face. A line of dried blood ran from his cheek to his chin. What happened to you? Admiral Young demanded. Cultural exchange, Daniel said simply. He turned to the fleet, commander and ambassador. These are our leaders. What followed was unlike any diplomatic ceremony in human history. In the main conference room, with both human and Vraxian delegations present, Daniel explained the ritual he and the fleet commander had developed, a combination of human handshakes and Vraxian trust gestures. The key moment came when the fleet commander used one of its limbs to make a small cut on Daniel's palm. A murmur ran through the human delegation. "It's all right," Daniel assured them. He allowed his blood to pool in his palm. Then, following the plan they had discussed, he used his own blood to draw a symbol on his forehead, a Vraxian mark that translated as peaceful coexistence. The Vraxian delegation erupted in clicks and vibrations that overwhelmed the translation systems. The humans couldn't understand the words, but the meaning was clear from the changing colors on the Vraxians' carapaces: approval and respect. Admiral Young stepped forward cautiously. "Does this mean we have an agreement?" The fleet commander's response came through the translator. "We recognize humans as non-prey, non-predator species, separate but equal in the stars. Blood freely given, not taken, seals this truth." As the two formal treaty documents were prepared, Daniel slipped away to the medical bay. His ears were ringing painfully from hours of exposure to the high-frequency components of Vraxian speech. The cut on his cheek and palm throbbed. Dr. Rivera examined him with concern. "You have micro-ruptures in your eardrums, and these cuts need proper treatment." Daniel barely heard her through the ringing. "Did it work? Is the treaty being signed?" Dr. Rivera smiled. "Yes, Admiral Young is calling it a historic breakthrough in interspecies relations." "You're a hero, Professor." Daniel didn't feel like a hero. He felt exhausted. As Dr. Rivera treated his injuries, Captain Miller entered the medical bay. "You disobeyed orders, risked your life, and nearly started an interstellar war," she said. Daniel winced. "I know. I'm sorry." "Don't be," Miller said, surprising him. "It worked. The Vraxians are already sharing information about their propulsion systems, properly translated this time." She watched as Dr. Rivera bandaged his hand. "I thought you were just here to fix the translation system." Daniel gave a tired smile. "Language isn't just words, Captain. Sometimes it's blood and trust, too." 3 days later, as the USS Horizon began its journey back to Earth, Daniel watched Jupiter recede through his viewport. His ears still rang, faintly, but the doctors assured him the damage wasn't permanent. In his hand, he held a small data crystal, a gift from the ambassador containing Vraxian literature and art. He had come to translate words. He left having translated worlds.